Today on this episode of JaxPunx, we are talking with RAEF Godwin. I know him as Rafe Johnson because we go back to elementary school, and he is a founding member of JaxPunx. And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, giving me any credit, it's all you, Brenda. Like, I mean, I think we had talked about like the idea of like sort of documenting some of this stuff and the time period in Jacksonville between sort of the backside of the Southern rock movement into like early 90s and the Limp Bizkit and all that stuff. Like that time that happened from the late 70s to the early 90s and what was going on here as a reflection of what was going on, you know, in the national sort of like alternative economies. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's a passion in that to like try and document a period that there weren't cell phones, you know, there wasn't, people didn't have video cameras.
Right.
I mean, if you did, they were like 50 pounds on your shoulder, and there weren't really T-shirts, there weren't ticket stubs, there wasn't a lot of like, everything's like in our head, and so like as much as possible trying to like capture what was. So if the Times Union or Journal sent photographers there, like what photographs exist, what articles exist, what oral histories exist, and kind of get that down. So,
yeah, I love this project. From my recollection, like we had coffee, and you were talking about how there wasn't a lot out there to document all of the massive creativity that we experienced in our growing up here in Jacksonville, of all of the major musical talent and artists that were from here, and it seemed to just be focused on Leonard Skinner, and they're great, but like there's this huge, rich punk alternative, and you know, like it wasn't even broken down really, from what I remember, into like metalheads or punks. You know, you basically like liked music and you went out and you kind of saw the same people, but definitely I was always into the more punk scene.
yeah. I mean, it was reflective. I mean, for anybody who's familiar with, like, one of my favorite scenes was the LA scene, and very similar, where you had all these like different types of music. You know, the Minutemen and Black Flag and X and the Go-Go's, and like things had very little in common other than they weren't like mainstream popular music. So they sort of galvanized together. So I think a lot of that here, I think a lot of the music that was coming out, a lot of the bands that formed and the clubs that formed here were sort of catering that. It's not on Rock 105. It's not.
Yeah.
They're not going to play at the Coliseum, you know, and sort of do it yourself kind of mentality.
Yeah, DIY labels.
Yeah. Right.
So alternative before it was alternative, right. Indie before it was indie.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, just talented people getting together, forming bands, and we were privy to some of that. So let's see, the first icebreaker is, I put my glasses on. Why did you start listening to punk and hardcore?
I think, you know, I obviously the two things that sort of hit when we were in junior high was like MTV, and I guess this probably predated our junior high, but the first time I was exposed to it was like Columbia House Records, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and it was like the first exposure to, because up until that you were listening to whatever was on the radio, or whatever your parents were listening to, whatever. And so it was the first time it was like our music, meaning what kids were listening to. And so and MTV for for those younger, like it was like everything. It had everything on there. So whatever, if you were into Prince or Michael Jackson or whatever, but the stuff that I would see and like would do a double take is like the Clash, and so quickly, Adam and the Ants and the Clash and stuff like this, I was like, hey, what is all this about? And so probably the first, when I first did the order, which was a complete, it was a complete grift, was Columbia House, where it's like, we'll send you 10 cassette tapes for a penny. Yeah, and then it was like $12.99 a month after that, which at that time was probably equivalent to like $100 now.
Yeah.
And it was like, and so your parents would get the bill.
Yeah.
We weren't getting the bill, and like, what the heck is this? By that time you already absconded with the 10 tapes. And,
yeah.
So I think probably the Clash, the Clash Combat Rock, and then the back catalog of their stuff was the gateway drug. To sort of like, okay, this is something I'm kind of into, and then that begat. Then you start from there. There was no online, so how you then became informed? I guess you like started talking to like-minded people, and they're like, hey, and then all of a sudden it's the Sex Pistols, and you start listening to that, and then from there it just sort of took off. And then I think MTV then started to have like the 120 minutes, and so
good old days.
Yeah, so you start to galvanize around with your friends groups that are into that same type of music, and it happened all really quickly, because I think from that time, which would have been like 8th, 9th grade, to by the time I get to high school in 10th grade, somebody's like, I can't remember, do you want to go see a live show in Gainesville? So I was like, I have no idea what this is about. This is not like, because I think probably prior to that I'd probably been to a handful of concerts at the Coliseum. I recall like Hall & Oates and maybe Def Leppard or stuff like that.
U2, did you go to U2?
Went to U2. Unforgettable Fire. I don't think we were old enough to have been cool enough to have gone, just because they played at what's now the Center for Performing Arts, like the Civic Auditorium. Yeah. They played on the War Tour, which is insane.
I was too young.
Yeah, too young. And then the local band, the Attitudes, opened for them at that show, which is insane. And so, but my first was like, do you want to go to Gainesville to see a show? And again, the hardest stuff I had listened to at that point would have been like the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
And I go to Gainesville beginning of my 10th grade year, so I was probably like 14, 15, and I go to see, and it was DRI and Corrosion Conformity, and I was like, what in the heck is this? Like, this is insane. And it was a super small, like one of those like, one of the like the Knights of Columbus Hall or whatever it was, the places where they would where they would put on shows where probably the people who were renting it turned a blind eye and didn't know what was going on, and like, and so I saw that and I was like, holy cannoli, like, what is this? And I was like, this is pretty electric. It was like, okay, I need to see more of this stuff. And that happened at the same time that there started to be shows with like at the Cedar Hills Armory. Yeah,
Blaine Cruz.
And so it seemed like it all happened like at the same time, super fast, right? Like it went from like listening to an Adam and the Ants tape to all of a sudden going to see hardcore punk shows in Gainesville, in Tallahassee, and college towns where they would come through. Not many of them stopped here. And at the rise of the people who were doing it before us, who were older, Brenda McKelvey and the Switchblades and those guys, and Blaine Cruz, and they were doing shows that predating us a little bit by only like a year or two, but the Blighted Area and the Inhabitors over on University, and by the time we started going, it's at the Cedar Hills Armory, and then later Ray's Club and 5 Points at the 730 Club, and you're like, wow. So like, and then Ray started bringing national acts in, like Black Flag and the Descendants and Toxic Reasons and all these things, and you're like, it seemed like 20 years, but it was probably 20 months. Like it was just super compacted. But those were incredible. And again, those guys seemed like they were really old at the time. Yeah. You're like, wow, they can like put on their own shows and they can rent out a place. Yeah, we were probably 15 and they were probably 21. Yeah. Or even, if even. So it was sort of exposed to all that, and I sort of gravitated to it, and like, started to, we were always, reading the same national zines, local zines, Maximum Rock and Roll, and then Sarah Mill had the, her local zine, but the Maximum Rock and Roll would expose us to Agnostic Front and all these other like national bands, DRI and all these things, and so you'd read about it about
Black Flag.
right, and then
Chromax.
and then VHS tapes, so we can go see like Decline of Western Civilization and Suburbia and like all these kind of shows, and like you start to like, it all starts to come together. You're like, okay, this is my tribe. This is the stuff I want to like gravitate to, and how and what I relate to, both in terms of like the style of the music, but also as equally as important to me is like what they were saying. So I was always like liner notes, kind of like lyrics, like what are these people saying? So like I tell my mom all the time that like she got extremely lucky that like I was like, had like all this positivity being pumped into me, but I didn't even realize it. Like I'm like Ian from Minor Threat and Fugazi and the Chromags and all these bands, Agnostic Front, all these bands are and also I was also hugely into rap. So you had what Chuck D and them were doing with Public Enemy, and obviously the culmination is Beastie Boys, where they're pulling it all together between the punk scene and the hip hop scene, the synergies between those in New York, and like all of that I was all in. So by that point I'm like touching the drain at the bottom of the deep end, and like we were living at like Wax Record Hound and getting anytime like a new like the Reagan Youth album comes in or something, I'm like, holy cow, this is like such good stuff. And so that begat like doing road trips, going to like Atlanta to see the Bad Brains, and going to Tallahassee to see 7 Seconds and Verbal Assault, and so it was so all that again seemed like going from like Adam and the Ants to like Bad Brains in a period of like 3 years. It just seemed like forever. The time period when we were young, a year seemed like 10 years, but when you look back on it, you're like, that happened really. That escalated quickly. Somehow I went from a super scrubbed clean version of punk on from going from thinking like Rebel Yell is punk to attending a Bad Brain show and going, okay, this is next level. This is different.
So like what I remember from elementary school was like really liking Kiss, and then like junior high I was like into like Van Halen, and then from there it was like Iron Maiden, and so it was kind of and then the Def Leppard, and then that's when I started like getting exposed to like Fear and
but what's funny is you look back and like we think of those things as so different, but Gene Simmons was one of the first people to like shine a light on Van Halen and go, these guys are somebody so he partly discovers Van Halen. If you go back and watch Decline of Western Civilization, they have this one scene where it's like X is in their apartment, and they're talking to X scene, and they're talking to John, and John's giving this guy a stick and poke tattoo.
Yeah. That
guy was a roadie for them, an equipment guy, but also he had his own band, and it was he worked at a taco place that was called Top Tacos, and he would give all the alternative music scene guys and women like free tacos late at night. So it'd be the 2 a.m. spot you would go to and get free food. So it was called Top Tacos, so they called him Top Jimmy.
Okay.
That's the Van Halen song in 1984. The song Top Jimmy by Van Halen is about him. And so Van Halen is like David Lee Roth was connected to that punk scene. It's like, it seems like Ray Manzarek from The Doors. Jim Morrison dies in 73, and posthumously they release LA. 6 years later, the dude is with Slash Records producing Los Angeles, and playing on some of the tracks, keyboard, and you're like you think of it like this thing is completely compartmentalized. Like the Doors was what my mom was listening to and exposed me to, and then Van Halen we're discovering on MTV, and like, but these things aren't radically different. You know, it's just it's all good music. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
What do you remember? What your first album was that you bought or stole?
I think it was the 10 tape deal from Columbia.
Okay.
I think it was like
That's the stole.
Well, my mom paid for it later on a monthly crazy charge, but I think it was the Clash Combat Rock was definitely the one that I was like, this is mine. I'm sure I had stuff. I'm sure I had Charlie Daniels Band something back in the day, but the first okay, this is my music and this is my thing.
Yeah.
I do remember my first car, a 1984 VW. First tape I popped in was The Cure.
Nice.
Behind the Door, like that. Yeah, and again, I would go to Einstein.
Yeah.
Early Einstein,
Yeah.
and actually just had breakfast this morning with Tammy Fairclough.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So Tammy owned Einstein, and like before Einstein, she was telling me, I didn't realize her parents opened the music store in like 1974.
Wow.
And like that became the Theory Shop, and then they ultimately opened Einstein the club. But they were showing, you know, the Chili Peppers and Fishbone and Jane's Addiction and Nirvana and like, you know, and a lot of regional alternative like 10,000 Maniacs and Fetch and Bones. I love Fetch and Bones. Fetch and Bones is amazing. Hope is like incredible. And so, so that was what was cool.
Pylon.
Yeah. So you had the West Side, which was a lot more.
Mother Nun.
It was but a lot more hardcore. You know, like
Yeah.
that was where you're seeing Black Flag. I mean, Henry Rollins and Black Flag, and at the 730 Club. That kind of stuff, and Descendants were not going to play at Einstein. Conversely, you're not going to get, you know, Mary's Danish and Driving Crying at like 730. So you had this sort of like, you know, cool mix of like different types of music being played in the city, and so yeah.
Let's see. Who were your friends that you went out with to shows with? Do you have any shout outs for your old school homies?
I mean, the matriarch of the scene was Sarah McGill, right? Sarah McGill was the one like produced her own zine, and I would with Billy, her brother Billy McGill is a buddy of mine, and you know I'm not going to blame Billy, I would steal her zines and go out to Wags Record House in Orange Park and trade them for like records, and then he would sell them. Yeah, but like, the crew from like Ortega, there was Tyler Godwin and Mark Hilbert and Matt Roberts and John Peterson, R.I.P. A lot of those guys would go to the shows with. One of my favorite local bands was Body Count. Again, it was and what you learn is you start to dig it.
Not Ice-T.
Not Ice-T, Body Count. This band was local. They were probably 15 years old, and what I found out later is they would go to Edge City, you know, in 5 Points, where Tom and Ganell, the owners of Edge City at the time, would loan kids couple $100 so they could go, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but there was a recording studio at Edison, like near Edison and like Stockton, like never would have thought, and for $200 they could get a certain amount of hours of recording time. So Edge City would front them the $200, they would go there, record a tape, they would get the tape, and let's say they get 100 copies of it, they would take most of those back to Edge City and they would sell them for $4, $3 a piece, recoup their money, and then the band would probably end up with like 10 or 20 tapes. Like, and so you would go to like Edge City and get Blaine Cruz or Body Count or Switchblades or any of those, and so Body Count, still my favorite band to ever come out of Jacksonville, definitely in the hardcore genre. And we've had a good scene. I mean, like, we had, again, the alternative, you had bands like Beggar Reeds and other bands that were, became pretty...
Three Blind Mice,
yeah. You had a bunch of really good music. Obviously Steve Stiletto and the Switchblades were like huge. And then, Blank Cruise, and then Mental Brains that became Brutal Assault, right?
Yeah.
And so it was fun for a town that, like, you know, we like to. When you grew up here, you thought, get me out of this town. This is a, you know, one horse, like, you know, sort of redneck town.
Yeah.
But we sort of pulled it off. I mean, not we. I wasn't. I was like an observer and an attender and a purchaser of tapes. But
Yeah.
like, but it was pretty cool. And it took people like Ray McKelvey and Henry Wagner and Tammy Fairclough and those kind of people to sort of and Tom Ganell to, like, create a scene.
Yeah. Tommy Berlin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you see if we're still rolling? Okay. Let's see. You just named your favorite punk bands. Let's see. Do you want to talk about, like, where you grew up, what side of town, what schools you went to, any of that stuff?
Yes, I mean, I grew up here on the west side, so I moved out to the beach when I was in, like, 10th grade, but for some crazy reason, I, like, wanted to still go to school with my friends that because we went to Fishburne, so I was born in St. Vincent's Hospital, like, we grew up here in Jacksonville. So I would come back. I went to Ed White High School, went to Lakeshore Junior High, so same junior high that Ronnie Van Zant went to, right?
Yeah.
Like my mom went to Lakeshore and Lee with Ronnie Van Zant, and
that's awesome.
And so we had that sort of background, I guess, that we not rebelled against, because I mean now, like, Skinner may be my, like, you know, desert island tape, right?
Yeah.
I love that music, and it's like, I don't know how much of it is it's such great music or how much of it is just sort of like woven in the DNA of us growing up here.
Yeah.
But yeah, grew up here on the west side, moved out to the beach, you know, surfing all the time, like, and so developed friendships out there. So I had friends both.
We kind of all migrated out to the beach as soon as we could get into cars.
Yes, yeah. It was a different time. It was like out there was just like undeveloped. It was, you know, you go out there now and it's like slam. I don't remember anything between the Regency Mall and the Intercoastal Waterway. You know, it was like 2 lanes. Yeah, but no, it was great. So, and then there was, you know, like I said, the Gainesville scene was big because you could always go there and see bands play there. I mean, I've seen so many bands from GBH to.
Gainesville's always been fun.
I want to say it was one of the first, probably like 10 shows for Fugazi outside of the DC area. Like somehow they and everybody went there because of Ian, but I went there. I mean, I love Minor Threat, but I was one of my favorite bands of all time was Rites of Spring, and so and Brendan Canny, who was the drummer, and he, those guys were from Rites of Spring, so I go there as much to see them and the new band they formed, and they played, I think, again at Knights of Columbus, and you got to meet the band. That was the other thing. It's like you got to meet them. So I by the time I was 18, I had one-on-one conversations hanging out with HR and Daryl from Bad Brains, with Roger and Vinny from Not So Front, with Kevin Seconds, and with Ian McKay and Jeff Nelson, and it's all of our. That was the other thing. It's if you were a huge fan of the Police, no knock on the Police, but you're not hanging out with Sting,
right?
But these guys, they seemed like heroes because the music was great, because they were from other cities, they were from LA and New York or whatever. But you got to meet them, and it was
always approachable.
Oh, completely approachable. So were you at the Not So Front show in San Marco
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that was 85.
Knights of Columbus.
Or Knights of Columbus in San Marco, yeah. And so, you get to hang out afterwards and meet with Roger and that stuff. And so when we just saw the most recent show, it's 40 years later. And still, it's crazy.
And Vinny just turned 70. Vinny Stigma.
That's bananas.
And he's a badass.
That's crazy.
He's still playing and jumping around. That's wild.
Yeah. So then I got exposed to the New York scene more. I had a buddy of mine that was in the band at the beginning of the band Warzone, and so he came back to Jacksonville and brought their first 7-inch, and then that begat, he turned me on to like Pro Mags and all that stuff, and that whole scene beyond Agnostic Front. Because even I don't even know, probably Max and Roll was talking about it as much, but Max and Roll kind of had their favorites, so they would like continue to hammer the stories in the same. But you had to really sort of dig into to discover some of the new stuff. So became really deep into the New York scene as well. Always loved the LA scene, like the Minutemen.
Did you ever get to go up to CBGB's?
I did. It was much later. Well, much later. Now it's 30 years ago. But I went in like mid 90s, which seemed like I was way past the when now looking back, it was only 10 years from probably the absolute heyday of like everything from Talking Heads to Ramones to Agnostic Front, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, before it was like turned into whatever it is now. Is it a clothing store or record store or something?
It's some kind of no, it's not even that cool. I don't know.
I know. I walk by it when I'm in New York. I walk by it and I don't pay much attention and keep walking.
Yeah, it's ruined.
Yeah. So now, like, I was a part of obviously what you're leading with this stuff, and like they're originally going to do a music museum in Jacksonville. They were going to call it Jam, which I thought was really cool. Now I think it's like just pivoted to be a general history museum. But as a part of that, it sort of spurred me to like try and document as much as I could. So getting a lot of the photos that exist from the Switchblades and Blank Crews and Blighted Area and some of those things as they would uncover. And early bands like the Great Invisibles, which is Guy Arvid, who used to live in Murray Hill, and the Attitudes, which is the bridge band for me, because the Attitudes were there was a crossover between bands that were formed with Johnny Van Zandt. It was called like the Austin Nichols Band, and so the guitar player for there ended up after the plane goes down and Johnny ends up joining Leonard Skinner. He obviously ditches Austin Nichols Band, and so the guitar player from there goes to join with the guys that were forming a band with Ray McKelvey and what ultimately became the Attitudes, and then Ray spun off and did the Switchblades. But the Attitudes opened for U2 at the Civic Auditorium, and they opened for like the Romantics and like they were signed to Capricorn, and then I can't remember, like Capricorn, but some scandal, and Capricorn went under, and they never got to release their album, and sort of like just missed it by that much. But researching some of those bands is sort of that bridge between Southern rock and what became alternative, and how all of them were really tight and splintered off to become all these other bands. And so now to this day I'm friends with like George Cornwell, who's Jerry, who played the guitar player for the Blank Crew, the early Blank Crews band, and then a lot of the bands from the West Side that were, and Sarah, there's a great chart on one of her zines that sort of lays it all out of where it started. It's like a family tree of Jacksonville punk and alternative.
What is she doing now?
She passed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
you have that chart?
I have it.
Awesome.
So it sort of shows guitar player moves and forms this band, like KP Beaver, he was behind Distrust, and he was also Body Count, and I'm blanking on but he was almost any band had either KP or Cornwell or Ray McKelvey, some of these guys in it. So yeah, she sort of lays it all out. I can share that.
That's awesome, definitely. And yeah, so like when we were first talking about this project, like I just, because I do website design for a living, and I was just like, okay, well, what I can contribute is like creating a website or an archive of all of whatever flyers and photos and videos and stories we can record, because I'm not like a writer. But my idea was like more DIY and get everybody to talk about their experience, and then that could be used as a resource for later, whoever wants to write something about it. At least they have like first, person recount of their experiences growing up here.
Right. And I think that can become, I mean, they did it with like Einstein. Have you seen that book, the Occupancy 250,
Yeah.
which is a really cool sort of document of a time and a place and a period. Now, it was a little bit different in that it was a local venue, not necessarily, I mean, there were local bands that played there, Beggar Weeds, Rain Sanction, there were a lot of, but it was, what Tammy created was a regional, national venue with people coming through, like 10,000 Maniacs and Chili Peppers and Fishbone and all of them play. But that same sort of documentation of like, so I
yeah, they did a great job.
Yeah, so I'm sitting on a decent amount of like photos and flyers, and you've got flyers and like, so I think it's some of the raw material is there to sort of start to put together, sort of a written history, and that's why I was also doing the oral histories, like you're doing stuff like interviewing some of these guys because they're passing,
exactly.
like Ray's gone,
and also like even if they're still here, like my memory is fuzzy, so that's why another reason why this was like a passion project that I was like yes, because like it's been a while now, and so like your memory gets fuzzy, and then what's helpful is if you meet with some friends who may have been at the same thing or same time, and they can help you piece it together and get your story out.
Right. You sort of go, was I? I think I was there. Was I there?
Yeah, I know, this like blurry memory.
What's the old Woodstock joke? If you remember it, you weren't there.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's but yeah, no, I think the interviews. I mean, some of the guys that I've done interviews with have passed since doing the interviews.
Yeah.
It's like some hard living.
And we had like Frank Bago was supposed to be with Tim Armstrong when we recorded Tim. Huh?
McIntyre.
I'm sorry, McIntyre. Yeah. See what I'm talking about? Exhibit A. But he, couldn't make it, and then he's gone. So.
Oh, Frank passed?
Yeah. So anyways, I would like to encourage everybody watching, if you're still watching, to help us get this done. This is DIY. It can't get more raw than this, and low production. So it's all about us just preserving whatever we want to remember, and whoever, maybe you guys have children. I don't have children, but
yeah, no, I think it's important. I mean, they have the zine thing at the downtown library. I think there's definitely a space for preserving this history and sort of like documenting.
yeah, I love the zine scene.
Yeah. So cool.
But I was excited because you told me something really cool, which is John Doe.
Yes, so super excited about that.
Tell him about it.
Yeah, so I retired after 30 plus year in corporate. Now it's like get to do what I want to do when I want to do it with who I want to do it with, and so I was like, you know what, like I'd like to bring John Doe to Jacksonville. So I just reached out to his manager. He's like, yeah, he'll come. Like happy to go. He's living in Austin, Texas now, and so like X is definitely one of my favorite all-time bands. And like I had seen them recently in Columbia, South Carolina. They were supposed to play a tour with Los Lobos, and they were going to be playing at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. That tour got canceled, but when I reached out to him, so he's going to be coming in February 13th to Albatross, and so everybody from like James at Tiger Records to Mikey at Albatross to everybody's been super supportive, and so the Beggar Weeds, one of the local bands, is going to play on the same night, and so I couldn't be more excited to have John out, and like he's sort of a goat. He's been in it since the beginning. Like I said, Man's producing their albums. Like Los Angeles came out in like 79 or 80, like 40, almost 46 years ago.
Yeah.
But, so
don't miss that show.
Yeah, don't miss that show. It's gonna be
awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody come out, show up, pull up.
Yes, please. It's the only show he's going to be playing in Florida. Like, maybe the only one in the Southeast. Like, and he sort of sticks, I think, for his solo stuff, he sticks to around Austin and the West Coast. But yeah, by all means, come out, check it out.
Definitely. Do you want to talk about like about bands and going to the Milk Bar days.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't have like the timeline. It feels like it was like, it came later, right? Like it came a little bit later. It was probably like, if I had to throw a dart, I'd probably say like, it probably opened in like 88, 89.
Yeah. It was more 90s.
Yeah, so I mean, there were some bands that were still like, I remember seeing 7 Seconds play there. I think Bad Brains may have played, but I don't know if it was with HR.
Yep, Rob's saying yes.
Yeah. But no, it was, I mean, like, yeah, I know Larry, who was a part of that, and like, they had, it was a well more, it was right up there with Einstein in terms of like, well run and professionally, like they knew what they were doing. It was not 7:30 Club. Ray didn't know what he was doing. It was just like here's
it was like a band room that we could go to.
Here's a shell with no security and no bathrooms, and like, you can come see really cool bands and you may get hurt.
Yeah.
And like, but like, yeah, that was, but it was more like all types of music, like but I think that may have been later, because I remember going when I went and saw Bad Brains in Atlanta. I think it was the I Against I tour, and that was still the head HR. But the Mill Bar was a cool club, and then I'm trying to think what came later. Because didn't they have 2 incarnations? Like it was the one.
Well, so it was Metropolis, and then it went to Milk Bar, and then 618.
So Metropolis was the one that was where the library is now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Milk Bar was when it moved down. Yeah.
On Adams.
Yeah. Nice. It was a cool club. I mean, there was a lot of. I think they may have had even like iced tea there. No.
I think
Bar?
so. Yeah. They had a lot of acts. So I wasn't living in Jacksonville. I had to go into like other towns. But what about after that? Like I know most recently it was Rain Dogs was like the main punk venue.
Nighthawk. I mean, I saw Cro-Mags at Nighthawks recently. Like it wasn't too many.
Yeah, Nighthawks, and then of course Jackrabbits has been around forever too. So.
Yeah, I've seen, and then now Albatross, which was Underbelly before that, and so yeah, definitely the spirit of it stays alive, and a lot of cool bands. Yeah, and then there's the stuff out at Kona, right?
Yeah, Kona's become a great venue, which is exciting. So we have some new venues, and it's still going. Like there's Lenny and Betsy's kid Sid has a band, and there's lots of kids doing bands now. So.
And trying to track down some of the recordings, because there were bands that came after. Yeah, after I'd like gone out to college, and bands that were that I know were big within the relative local scene, like Creeps and. Right?
Oh yeah.
And,
the Creeps are awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So I've tried to track down Jim DeVito. Do you know that who it is? So Jim.
That's the recording guy.
Yeah. So I've been out to his studio out in St. Augustine.
Well, good. We need to get his interview.
Yeah.
And Wags said he would do an interview too, so we just had to make it happen.
So the best story that DeVito had was he recorded the original Switchblades tape, and so he does all the recording, and then they go to pick up the master tapes or whatever, and let's say it was like $500 or something, and the guys and Mike Butler's still alive, so he could probably tell the story better than I would, but like. They didn't have the $500, and so as legend has, as DeVito says again, I'm accusing Mike Butler of something, so he can like come at me, but as legend has it, they were like, okay, well before we go get the money and pay you, can we hear it? And so the Butler had like a tape recorder, and so as DeVito played the master, Butler recorded it. And they took that and so the first Stiletto tapes were bootleg off of a illegal recording of DeVito's tape. And so, but clearly he didn't hold it against him because he subsequently did other, the other recordings for them and stuff. But I think he also did the Creeps. He also did bands like Crowsdale is another there was alternative. They weren't like hardcore, but a punk band, Shannon, who went on to Europe and had a following there. But he did a lot of great recordings out of there. So like he's sitting on all those original like master tapes and stuff. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So and he's got all the equipment and all that stuff. And he also did all the way, fast forward to like JJ Gray and Mofro has recorded out of that same studio. So
Nice.
he's got all their stuff. And so
We should do a road trip down there.
Yeah, at the time somebody was gonna invest in like buying the studio, but keeping him there. I don't know. This is the last time I talked to him was probably like a year or two ago. So, and he's older, so definitely want to jump on that one. But,
Yeah.
But some pretty cool stuff that again, without him, we don't have those early Switchblades recordings, which
Yeah.
ultimately resulted in they were actually played on like Rock 105. So you'd hear like. You'd be like, wait, what? Like this is actually like airing on. But
Well, because they
Are you
would do
talking
like
Mike?
popular, Mike Butler. We got his interview.
Oh, you did?
He's published, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's published in season 1. So we're trying to wrap up season 1 here with the 3 of us getting ours done, and then we'll start season 2.
And what you guys are doing, both with the documentary and with the actual live music and recording, like it's like you guys are still after it. I feel like I'm like grabbing photos and old articles and trying to like be an archivist of some sort of, but like actual like doing it. You guys are out there doing it, so that's like incredibly cool. And,
Well, I love live music, so hopefully we'll never stop going to live music. We have the new venue down the street is Hard Love. That's in Murray Hill. And then they've been doing like little punk shows at Fantasy Tattoo out in Orange Park.
Oh, really?
And
So have you guys played there at the Hard Love
no,
yet?
Rob's band Left on High is not together anymore, but Rob is now recording, mixing, and mastering for bands.
So watch out for somebody recording your masters. So I look forward to like continue to try and document this stuff and get it all down and get the stories and to be able to sort of craft a history and chronology and document the scene it was.
All right, well, I think we've covered everything.
Cool.
And is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that
No?
about covers it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.